this is Sam Botstein from MachineSkills.com. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube for all of our machine tutorials, and check us out at MachineSkills.com for all of our tutorials, as well as new courses and sounds for Machine. In this tutorial, we're going to take a close look at the ice effect built into Machine. The ice effect is a special reverb intended for cold and metallic sounds, and it uses a series of self-oscillating filters to color the sound. If you look it up in the manual for Machine 2, it'll point you to this demo song, which comes with the Machine 2 factory library, Come Into My Disco, to this scene, which is a sort of break in which we hear the ice effect automated all the way up, in terms of the mix, on this lead sound here on the first group. Here's what that lead sound sounds like without the ice. And in this particular case, I've actually soloed the group, so we're not going to hear the beat under it at all. So this doesn't actually sound that good to me at all. We have a very sort of simple synth sound, and on it we have a whole bunch of different transients that sort of sound like a mistake when played raw and open like that, soloed. But with the ice effect on, you'll hear that it's completely transformed. Notice that we actually have things automated here, so even if I turn the mix all the way down, it's automated such that we'll actually hear it turned all the way back up by this automation lane here. So here's what it's like with the ice on. Now, you'll notice that this particular case includes a flanger after the ice effect. You can check that out in your Machine software if you'd like. We're going to focus solely on the ice effect this time. I'm going to disable it and load up a clean ice effect with no modulation or automation, just to demonstrate the different spots of this particular effect. Now, it's worth noting that the most important parameter here is really the output mix. This is a pretty simple dry-wet between 0% where we're only hearing the dry audio and none of the effect, all the way up around 100% we'll hear only the affected sound. We're not going to hear any of the dry sound at all. Also, if you have the mix set to 100% and the other three knobs set to 0, you'll hear a very low filtered version of the dry sound, as compared to when you start to bring in the size parameter, it becomes more like a traditional reverb. The size is basically the size of the virtual space. Alone, this just sounds like a drawn-out version of the muted sound that we heard just a little bit earlier. But if you turn up the color a little bit, we'll actually have a lot more control over what we're hearing in terms of the center frequencies of those particular self-oscillating filters. This particular color effect sounds very good with a combination of Machine's automation. You can automate this by holding down the auto write button or the auto button on your Machine Studio or Machine controller, and simply move it while the sequencer is playing. The ice control acts sort of like the resonance for the self-oscillating filters. You'll notice that when you turn ice up, you start to hear a lot of high-pitched sound that you wouldn't necessarily associate with a traditional reverb. You'll also notice that the size is pretty directly related to frequency in terms of this particular effect. So when you automate the size here, you'll get a sort of pitch stretching, time stretching kind of feel. So these three particular parameters are not very discrete. When you turn one knob, you're really affecting the other two pretty significantly. This makes ice a very dynamic and unusual effect. The other thing to pay attention to is that ice is best used for large soundscapes. So if we listen to what we had here once again, you'll notice that there aren't really any gaps or breaks in this audio. Basically what we're hearing is a soundscape that persists throughout the entire scene. What I recommend for finding the sweet spot with the ice effect on any given sound is to start with the knobs in a position where the first three are all at 0 and the mix is at 100. This way you can slowly bring up the size to control the length of the reverb in general, and then use the ice and color to control the timbre and frequency content of that sound. If I decide that I would like the sound to die out just as the next note comes in, it looks like these happen just about every bar, we can actually dial that in pretty precisely with ice. Once I've decided on this, I should probably set the color and ice controls together. I recommend bringing them in slowly, which will allow you to stop on a sound that you like. Notice that the color and ice controls actually made the sound persist or last quite a bit longer, and that the size does not set the length or the decay of the reverb all its own. For this reason, we're going to actually pull the size back in and then compensate by turning the color and ice controls up more for the loss of size. Ice pretty much dominates the timbre of the sound that it's applied to, or even the group that it's applied to. However, some of the other very dramatic effects available in Machine's library complement it well.